a very close fight. I'm still a bit surprised that some judges had it 76-73.
Yeah.
But looking back, I think it is the right decision that Tommy Fury won. I think he showed that he's the better boxer for sure. Um, but yeah, I think that's really like what now for Jake Paul? You know, I saw him on his show. He did a BS with Jake Paul, like a little shorter episode after the fight, and posted today. I actually watched it. He honestly seems really upset. He does. He's kind of feels like it's a fork in the road. He could either go down a really bad path, he could let it consume him negatively, or use this as motivation in the future. You know, and it's gonna be interesting to see what he does. You know, because he put all of his eggs in the basket for this boxing thing, all of it. You know, guys like Logan Paul, KSI, these guys boxed, whatever, but that wasn't all like they were doing. You know what I mean? Like they were had other focuses. Like KSI is doing Sidemen, he's doing Prime, stuff like that. I know Jake Paul is better. The company, KSI is still doing YouTube. Like Jake Paul's boxing has the better company, but his main focus is boxing. He doesn't really
Yeah.
post on YouTube anymore. And I think that's where it gets concerning. You know, that's when that option gets hard or whatever, like what does he do? You know, and I think he is going to take the positive approach. I think he's going to learn from it. He said he was doing some journaling. He read his notes and stuff like that of his journaling. And he wants to get this Tommy match fight again. But what do you think? Do you think that's the right fight to take next? Do you think the outcome could be different? Like, or do you take maybe a KSI fight and then you beat a KSI? Let's say you beat a KSI, then you go and fight Tommy again, or you fight a Nate Diaz. Like what do you
Yeah.
think's next? Like, what would you do if you're Jake Paul?
I would, and I saw the same video. I saw him reading the notes. He said that, he felt lonely.
Yeah.
It hit him hard. He thought that he wasn't going to be able to, he thought he wasn't going to lose and feel like a loser. He said that he was surprised how difficult it was on him. And he's still dealing with it, obviously. It's only been a couple days since then. I think that it would be a mistake to fight KSI, especially if you ever want to beat a guy like Tommy Fury. Listen, are you really going to be waking up as motivated as possible to fight KSI? Because he said before that he could beat KSI without even training for him. And I think that's true. Of course, if he could just maintain his skills, he KOs KSI in the first round. And I don't think that's a fight that's going to get him out of bed. And when you're a guy who's waking up in silk sheets and you're this rich and you've already made it already, like you need a test to get you out of bed when you already have that lifestyle to begin with. I think that I would, if I were him, I would either take the Tommy rematch or I would push for a Nate Diaz fight, because Nate Diaz is still a legitimate fighter who is more dangerous than KSI, tougher than KSI. And
you can't not train for Nate Diaz.
You can't not train for Nate Diaz. Like, you're still going to train for him because you're going to want to be the first guy ever to knock him out. He's known for having that chin.
And he's got great cardio too. And if you get caught like not training hard, you're going to get screwed by a guy like Nate Diaz.
Exactly.
Like Conor McGregor the first time.
Yeah, I think that's another reason as to why I should take on Nate Diaz, because it's like an actual, I think it's not as tough as like an Anderson Silva, but nonetheless, it's still a matchup that would be exciting. It would make a lot of money, and it would force him to just continue to train and work on all the things that you didn't do that well in the Tommy fight, and then fight Tommy after. Because the thing is, I think Tommy proved, although it was a close fight, I think Tommy proved that he was a step ahead of Jake Paul just as a pure boxer. And Jake Paul's still green, but he has a lot of potential. He's still so new to the game, and it's impressive that he was able to close the gap with a guy that started training when he was a little kid. And I think that Jake Paul should want that rematch. I just don't know if he should get it next, because
too much emotion also.
Too much emotion, and you just got bested by this guy technically. And, if he fights you again, he's going to want to put a stamp on it. He's going to train just as hard that he did for the first fight. And I just don't know if you can make the difference that much. You have to let life unravel a little bit and just keep your foot on the gas. I think he needs to fight a guy like Diaz. Don't fight KSI. KSI is pathetic. I mean, I think that guy is such an easy fight for him, and he wouldn't get respect. People would just completely say, wow, back to YouTube. But then again, people are going to say, hey, back to beating up old MMA fighters with Diaz. Are there any other opponents besides? What's up?
You like take a fight against a random like boxer, and you
I
maybe
think
do
he should
some
either take a fight against a guy like Raheem Jr. or some shit, or
Rockman Jr.
Nate Diaz. Because again, if you really want the best of everything, you want some respect, fight another boxer. Just fight someone who is like, I don't know, get a tune-up fight, man.
Yeah, why not? You know
Fight
what?
on the undercard. Oh my gosh. Fight on the undercard.
Ryan Garcia.
Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Davis. Humble himself a little bit, get a win over a boxer, knock him out, then fight Tommy Fury. Just a guy that's a little bit worse than Tommy Fury, but still kind of known, maybe an older boxer, then fight. I like
that. I like that.
I like that, right?
I really like that. I never thought of that.
That's a big fight. It's going to sell a lot. Jake Paul's name is going to make it sell even
Paul's
more.
Gonna help it sell more. Ooh, I like that. He's not fighting for the money at this point.
But if his ego is too big, he'll say, I only want to fight as a main event. But I think that's silly.
I don't necessarily think it'll be like the ego thing. I just think he just wants that Tommy fight so badly. He wants to right the wrong. And I just think that he shouldn't, because I think that there would be too much emotion going into this one, you know? I think Jake can still knock out Tommy. I think if they rematch, I think there's a chance he knocks him out. I think he can knock him out in the first 4 rounds. I think there's a real chance. I think his right hand wasn't landing like it has in the past. And like it wasn't as accurate, I think, as it normally is. So I think the problem with that Tommy fight, I think Jake just was not used to the amount of volume punches Tommy was throwing. I think that's what really messed with him. You know, Jake just wasn't throwing enough volume. He couldn't keep up with that, you know? So I think that's kind of was the problem with that whole Tommy fight. I think that's why he lost. He said that Silva was tougher than him. He still says it right now. He said Silva was a tougher.
I think that's a coping statement. Listen, Tommy Fury, Anderson Silva was more unorthodox.
Yeah.
And so maybe in a way that can look like it's a trickier style, but he beat Anderson Silva like 6 rounds to 2.
But maybe he meant by that, like, you know what I mean? He said maybe it was like the adjustments he made in that fight.
Yeah. I just think he used his words poorly. I feel like he should have said Anderson was a weirder puzzle, but he should have Tommy Fury was the tougher fight in that he couldn't have as much success.
Yeah, I think what he meant was that that he made tougher adjustments to beat Silva than would have needed to be made against Tommy. I think that's kind of what he meant. But
Silva's not like a boxer, man. Tommy Fury is, Silva's a guy that's fought in Muay Thai and MMA, kickboxing. Like, he just doesn't. The fact of the matter is, Jake Paul has, for the first time he fought and this guy is talented, of course. Tommy Fury, of course, he doesn't want it that much, like his brother, but he's still talented. That's a pure boxing style. Like, it's very different. It's like going from karate to Muay Thai. It's just a different kind of striking. And in boxing, they have a different way of doing things.
A lot more
punches. It's so different.
And they just throw a lot more punches.
Style. I think now that he's seen that, he'll be able to adjust to it a lot better. And, that's why these MMA fighters, when they cross over to boxing, they're throwing punches as if there's like a threat of a takedown. And of course, they're not thinking that way, but they're used to that style. They're used to that like kickboxing kind of striking, and it just doesn't work in boxing.
Yeah. Do you think
unless you have like Francis Power or some shit, it just won't work?
Also, the other thing is that rematch doesn't do well. I don't think people care to see that much, honestly.
You don't think they want to see Jake Paul, Tommy again? I think, if it's on the undercard, this is, if I were to have a conversation with Jake Paul's manager and Jake Paul, like, they would tell me to go fuck myself.
Get Nikisa on the phone.
Exactly. I feel like I could actually convince them. I'd be like, dude, like, first of all,
got to come on the next podcast.
Yeah. And I think that, hardcore boxing fans might not like it, right? But at least they'll respect Jake Paul wanting to be on the undercard for this. It'll sell a lot of tickets. It's like us MMA fans when CM Punk fought, when guys come out of some other thing to fight in the UFC. It's interesting to us too. And I think that they'll respect that he's humbling himself by not, fighting in the biggest spotlight. But at the same time, hey, if you're Jake Paul and you want the rematch and you want people to care, fight on a night where all eyes are going to be on you in the boxing world and beat a boxer. That's what I think he should do. That's what I think is best for his career. If not Tommy Fury, beat another guy that's a boxer with a lesser name. Just beat someone that's around the same level as Tommy Fury and beat him.
I think I think Jake doesn't use Logan as much. That's one of his problems. I think if Jake included Logan on some cards and stuff like that, he could fight opponents that are maybe a little bit less named, but a better matchup. You know what I mean? Like he could maybe fight a boxer who's maybe like a little bit worse than Tommy that he could beat, and then he will get that credibility still because it'll be a boxer. You know,
The issue is
he
they
won't
have
need to
to be
worry
well
about the.
known. Like Tommy Fury
He won't need to
is the
worry
only
about.
boxer we could think of that actually is on that level, but still has a name because of his brother.
I
That's
mean,
the issue.
that's what I'm saying is if you take Logan, the name won't matter as much because you're going to sell pay-per-views no matter what because Logan Paul will be on the card too. You know what I mean?
I get it. As far as selling pay-per-views, yeah, I'm
I
talking
think
about
that's
it as
Jake's
like getting
problem.
respect.
You know,
I don't think he would get respect for taking on a guy with no name. Like people, even casuals will look at Tommy Fury and be like, okay, well, that's Tyson Fury's brother. You know what I mean?
So that's why he liked that fight a lot. But I just think
Yeah.
that like it was, I don't know. I just think that it was obviously too difficult for him. You know what I mean? Obviously was. So like, where do you go? You know what I mean? So I just think his only option is just to beat a guy who is a boxer, but he may not be as big of a name, a little bit lower level, beat him, get a knockout, whatever, gain some confidence, and then maybe fight Tommy. Because I think Jake could beat Tommy eventually. Like at this point in their careers, Jake is still so young and new to his career. Like he's improving more at this point than Tommy's improving. You know what I mean? So I
Logan
think
Paul
like,
versus Luke Rockhold. This guy says,
yeah,
Rockhold's fighting Mike Perry.
Let's talk. I just want to ask you before. I want to talk a little about Logan too, but I have a question for you before we talk about that. Do you think who would you pick in the rematch? Jake fought Tommy. Let's say if Jake fights
Depends on when it is.
So all right, so if Jake does a tune-up fight, gets a knockout against a boxer, a year from now rematches Tommy, would you pick Jake? And also, and then I'll give you two circumstances. That's the first circumstance. The second circumstance, if it's like an immediate rematch in a couple months, like 6 months or something.
Okay, immediate rematch in a couple months. I'd pick if both of them turn it around immediately. I'd pick Tommy, just because again, Jake Paul's lost. I don't know if that's enough time to like deal with the loss and then also make all the improvements.
Yeah.
And for a guy like Tommy, like it doesn't give him enough time to just like go away from boxing and ride into the sunset. So like he'll get on a training camp again after a win and he'll feel confident and he'll have all this motivation. If they fight in like a year and a half after Jake gets maybe Tommy Fury doesn't even get another fight up until then and takes time off and like goes on vacations and all that, then I think that Jake Paul would be a guy that I could definitely see winning that fight. Absolutely. Because Jake Paul, like, this is the hardest thing for him is to actually just continue to train super hard and to make adjustments. And I heard someone mentioning this. Jake Paul, he's like got to where he is with a really good team, like guys that are trying to help him out. But I feel like it's time to like change up the team a little bit. And this is why I say that. I don't know all these guys really well. BJ Flores, I'm sure he's a really good coach, but I feel like, when you're so new to boxing, I think you should just like take a little bit more from other styles and other trainers, So like
take a lot.
Fury had a new coach in the second half of his career. After the first Deontay fight, he switched with like Sugar something. I forget his name, but I feel like he should really test out some other guys to be on his team because like, again, man, you never know if you're going to continue to get to the next level with the same exact training team. I feel like
being so new. Yeah.
You could still have those guys around. I'm just saying like you should probably bring some other coaches in as well to like give you another look.
Yeah, I think that the only other concern is that Jake's like mental state. He had in his mindset that he couldn't lose. You know what I mean? And then you lose, like it's tough to recover from that. You know what I mean? I think that's why I don't know if you go back at the Tommy fight. I think you just be too emotional. I think even a fight with KSI, I think that could be a little bit too emotional too. I think I think they have a lot of beef, stuff like that. He just needs a tune-up fight. That's what Jake Paul needs. He needs a tune-up fight from an actual boxer. Maybe a little bit worse than Tommy Fury. A little bit less.
Dude, I honestly think, and let's type it in the chat if you can. Type it in the chat. Would you rather see Jake Paul fight a boxer on the Ryan Garcia, Gervonta Davis card, or would you rather see him fight Nate Diaz? Because I think like a tune-up fight with a boxer on that card would be amazing. I think that's probably the best bet. I think that's the best thing he
You
could
rather see
possibly do.
Jake Paul fight a
Yeah.
boxer.
What would you guys grade Tommy as a professional boxer? So this guy asked Edgy Bra, thanks for the question. I have to say, you know, while you type that, Jacob, I have to say I don't really know boxing enough to like give him a really good grade just because I have not watched that much boxing in my life. I've maybe watched like I don't even know, man. I have not seen that many fights. Um I don't know, but all I know is that I saw him strike, and I do watch striking. I watch Muay Thai fights, I watch MMA fights all the time. Dude, like say what you want, but both him and Jake Paul are good boxers. Like compared to the average pro, those guys are good. Sure. Compared to like the top 30 guys at that weight on earth, probably not there yet. But dude, come on, man. Like these guys are slipping extremely quick punches and landing good counters. I mean, not many people can do that shit in a real fight with the big gloves on. And I've noticed this as someone who's put on boxing gloves before. It's actually harder to strike with the boxing gloves than it is with like small gloves because your hand is so much lighter without the glove. And I think like what I saw, I was impressed with it. I was not watching a low level fight. Like there are haters that are going to watch Jake Paul and Tommy Fury and say it was boring. Like I saw so many memes about the hugging. There was a meme with the hugging and the farting sound in the background. I'm like, dude, these motherfuckers like
They're
are
just trying to
actually
follow something
are
they hate.
following the trend that they're just reiterating what other NPCs said because I watched a fight with guys that knew how to fight and it was entertaining and I was actually impressed. I thought it was a phenomenal fight and Jake Paul and Tommy Fury look like good strikers to me like when I'm watching it. Sure, they're definitely not like the polished boxers that we've seen, but they weren't 10 leagues below the one fight before them, Badu Jack versus that other guy, which is the same weight class. Sure, those guys would definitely win against Jake Paul and Tommy Fury, but they're like they're like, you know, if those guys are ranked in the top 10 or some shit, top 5 of their division, you know, because there's so many champions of boxing, then Jake Paul and Tommy Fury are just getting into the UFC essentially. And like, they're not that far ahead. You know what I mean? Like maybe Jake Paul and Tommy Fury are like in the 20 to 30 rank. You know, they're like mid-tier fighters for the UFC essentially. If you compare it for boxing, if you know what I'm talking about with the UFC rankings.
Yeah.
I think those guys put on a great fight, and like the haters need to shut up because they have no idea what they're watching. Like there are people that only watch Jake Paul fight and like, you know, a John Jones fight every once in a while. They watch 2 fights a year and they'll shit on Jake Paul and Tommy for hugging, but like I've watched way worse boxing than that. I saw, you know, George Camboso versus Devin Haney, and that fight put me to sleep. So this guy says fight on Tank card. Yeah, that's a good thing. If he rematches
if he loses Tommy, it's done.
Yeah.
It is done. If he loses,
that's true. I think you should definitely not rematch Tommy right away.
He shouldn't. But did you know that Tommy Fury, the fight did over 500K pay-per-view buys?
Yeah, that's what he said, though. I don't know if that's.
I believe it though.
I think it probably did pretty well. I mean, it was pretty hype. This guy says I'm a big Paul fan, but you know how boxing is. Even one loss is a career fucker. Not to mention 2 in a row if he loses a rematch. I think Jake Paul could afford a loss though, because just, you know, he's so new. And
I think it could make more people interested in it though. It
especially
could
when you're a big star, yeah.
Because they used to think his fights were rigged. They used to think he wasn't going to be in fights that he could lose in.
100%.
Now people saw he could lose. Like maybe they're more likely to tune in because they want to see Jake Paul lose, and they think it's a possibility that he does lose.
Yeah,
I don't know. It can go either way. I think he should use Logan more with this kind of stuff. Like I really think having Logan Paul is a big name. Like it's a little different than Jake. I think he's probably a bit more popular in terms of just like social media and stuff like that. I think Logan Paul's a guy, he can lose as many fights as possible. People will still be interested in him.
Yeah.
You know, because he's got all this other shit going on. So I think if you put Logan on his cards, Jake can maybe fight a little bit worse guys, and the card will still do well. Less of names, and I think the card could still do well. So I think Logan Paul versus Nate Diaz would be a good fight. I think Logan Paul versus Luke Rockhold would be a really good fight. Logan Paul versus Darren Till. What about that fight? Darren Till just got cut. Or would have
Uh,
to be
I
removed?
feel like, I mean, dude, I feel like Logan wins. Darren Till
But
literally
like
throws the left
that's
hand.
is that not an interesting fight?
Oh, it's definitely interesting. Yeah.
So like I think you use Logan. You know, fuck Logan going on KSI's promotion. Like fuck that. That's your brother. You know, you should try to get him to go on your promotion. Paul wins rematch. Haters will say the first one lost was scripted to build trilogy. What
Nah,
this,
dude, nah.
the
I feel like
scripted
the
shit
scripted talk is done, and I actually think
was
that's
so
what he
stupid.
gains from this is because people now know he ain't scripting any of his fights.
That was honestly crazy to me. The whole scripting shit was like
Again, it's the people that literally do not watch combat sports at all.
the scripting was crazy to like that was actually crazy to me. Like
Yeah.
to pull off a scripted fight is literally nearly impossible with social media nowadays. Like it's not possible. So I'm glad that people don't think it's scripted anymore. You know,
Yeah.
Jake lose like Tommy isn't gonna like Jake like winning would have been so much better for him than losing. You know what I mean? Like then
Oh
he could
yeah.
have went to a Nate Diaz fight, made a ton of money in that. Then he could have went to TSI, would have
Yeah.
made more money from doing that. So his betting company would do better if Jake won. Like you know what I mean? So I it's ridiculous. It's not rigged. Let's get that talk out of let's stop that. You know, and I just want to see Logan fight. That's who I really am interested in seeing too. I want to see
Dude,
Logan.
I can't. I've seen Logan fight, bro. He's so ass. Like
Yeah,
he's
but
not
dude,
good.
he's a personality though. Like
Yeah, but
build
like,
up and stuff
you
like
know,
that.
why not just get Trump in a boxing ring if it's just for the personality, dude?
I don't know. I mean, if Logan Paul's fighting Luke Rockhold or Darren Till, I'm interested.
He's not, dude. Logan Paul is not going to fight anyone that doesn't have a massive name.
I don't know. But Nate Diaz? Who
I
wins?
mean,
Nate
like,
Diaz or
I mean,
Logan
that would be
Paul?
cool, but I don't think Logan wants to box anymore, right? I mean, he's not.
No, he said he's coming back this year.
Then I would be cool. I mean, that would be
What about
interesting.
Logan versus Tommy? Jake
Yeah.
versus KSI.
I honestly feel like, you know, if I'm in Jake Paul's position, it's got to be tough to like lose when you have so much momentum, when you have all this money invested in boxing. You're a young guy, and like now you have to think about going to the gym in a month and sparring like pro boxers and getting brain damage. I just think like, is it really worth it? Like, I feel like if he just gets a win over, I don't know, bro. I feel like he shouldn't retire because he should redeem himself, but why not just go out there and do something else, man? Because I like Jake Paul. I want to see him box for sure. But it's almost like, dude, like you have so much success. Why do you want to fight so badly, man? Just
Yeah.
save your brain. Because
I think he should.
even if he does get the win back, and even if he does get some impressive wins, like, is it worth it to be a boxer? Like being an MMA fighter is like way less damage on the brain. And that's crazy because boxers, it's so much damage. I just don't know if it's worth it, man. That's the crazy thing that people aren't talking about here. It's like, and that's got to be going through his head. If I was Jake Paul, I would be like, yo, fuck boxing, man. I'm going to do some grappling MMA fights.
What about Jake Paul having a tune-up fight, fighting a boxer, beating a boxer, and then fighting Tommy again in like a year?
I
And
think what he could, if I was Jake Paul, I would get a tune-up fight, win, and then fight Tommy again, win, and then retire. Because like, I'm just saying,
if he beats Tommy, he should retire.
yeah, because like, dude,
He could show that he could beat a pro boxer.
let me ask you this: there was a lot of talk about Jake Paul, like, you know, one day climbing the ranks, potentially trying to be a champion. And what I'm saying, what I'm going to ask is, like, and the people in the chat, I want to hear what you have to say as well. Do you guys think that Jake Paul, do you think he still wants to be a champion? Or do you think this is a kind of loss that will completely change that?
I think it's done.
Fuck, dude. That sucks, man.
I really do. Dude, the way I heard him talking, I see a guy who's has doubt on putting all of his eggs in the basket. That's what I took after his post fight like BS with Jake Paul. That's what I like. He had like after the day after, like, so he had actual like time to really think about it. So yeah, I think it's done. And I think he's kind of like unsure if he made the right decision at this point.
This guy said he never wanted it to begin with. I disagree.
Oh, he definitely did. He definitely did.
He was invested in it big time.
Yeah, he was super invested.
He just wanted to brag about pursuing it. That is such bullshit. I completely did. I think this guy is just trying to basically like, I don't know what it is, man. Some people like they'll just never have a real nuanced idea of someone that they don't like, who's also cocky, being able to have some positives about,
Ambitions.
like it's a positive thing to work your ass off towards something. And people that don't like Jake Paul, they just won't even give him the benefit of the doubt that he could possibly work hard at boxing too. I
Yeah.
feel like you shouldn't be able to take you couldn't I don't think you should take that away from him. He clearly wanted to be a boxer. Like he was dedicating his life to it for 4 years.
He moved to Puerto Rico to box.
Yeah.
Yeah, to only focus on boxing. Jake knew he would never fight at a truly high level. He can't be that. Why? What?
I think that he was so convinced that he was going to be like a just a phenom, that that wasn't on his mind.
Yeah, I think I think so. I think he didn't think he was ever.
I mean, bro, you see these boxing fights, like the Badu Jack one before Jake Paul. Like those guys were taking so many shots, and I was like, it's not like a hard to watch because I've seen crazy wars in MMA too, but I just thought to myself, damn, like boxing is not a sport I would ever want to get into. Cause I even think about MMA, like, damn, MMA would be sick, man. Fighting in MMA, so many things you could do, submissions. Boxing, I just have no desire. I just feel like Jake Paul and Logan Paul, they have the wrestling background, or at least Logan Paul. I feel like they should just pursue MMA fights. Like start doing the same thing in MMA. Just do an MMA fight with KSI. Fight him for real. Do an MMA fight for KSI.
With KSI. Yeah, dude. I mean, do you think the KSI fight is still as big at this point? Or
I feel like I think it's kind of a pathetic turnaround, just because like you went from fighting a boxer to KSI. That's kind of like fuel to the fire for the haters to say, damn, bro, back on YouTube. You know what I mean? I think
if he wins, like it's kind of like.
But I think the only way to justify it is to do it MMA. And again, man, MMA is just cooler. Dana White might even bring them in for a UFC fight. Imagine that, dude. Imagine if Dana White brought them in for one fight. Logan Paul, Jake Paul on the same card for MMA. Give Jake Paul KSI. Give Logan Paul Chris Moutinho.
or Patty Pimblett.
Or Darren the left hand Till. Probably smoke him.
He probably, I think I'd pick Logan to beat Till. I think Logan takes him down.
If Till does the same thing he did to Dricus, literally just a left hand, I think anyone could beat him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's very unfortunate what happened, honestly, Saturday night. I think that was awful with all the stuff Jake is going on. It slowed his momentum down. His betting company is probably taking a dip from that too, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes to next. But I just hope he does not take the Tommy rematch. That's what I'm hoping.
Immediately.
I want to see him do it eventually. And I think he could get the win. I just think that right now he's not in a state to be really taking a rematch. I think he needs a confidence booster against some sort of boxer. Because if he beats a boxer, even if they're not a huge name, he still beat a boxer. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a boxer who's not terrible. He beats him. He could still say he beat a boxer. It'll help his experience. He'll get his confidence back. He knows that he can actually beat a boxer.
Yeah.
But
maybe
I think
Darren Till, man. Maybe Darren Till, because the only thing you're really gonna have to worry about is the
you're saying you're going back to the fighting MMA guys.
Yeah, that's like
you can't.
I mean MMA. I mean an MMA fight, bro.
Yeah, but I think in boxing, if you're Jay, if you want to continue boxing, you have to fight a boxer next. You have to. That's the only option. Because I agree. I agree with that. How is he gonna get up in the morning, knowing that he
quit
that the day after he wins, people are going to be like, oh, going back to MMA fighters, great. You know what I mean? So I think the only thing that will really satisfy Jake, the only thing that will get him up in the morning is him fighting and beating another boxer.
I agree. I think that those guys eventually should do MMA though, because
even Nate Diaz though, I don't know if Nate Diaz necessarily gets him up in the morning. I don't think so, because if he wins, what people are going to say, he just beat a 40-year-old MMA fighter.
You have to beat a boxer.
He has to beat a boxer. I think that's going to be the only way for Jake to be able to get his confidence back. Only way, I think. And only way for some fans to gain their confidence back on Jake too. You know what I mean? Beats a boxer. Doesn't need to be a great boxer. Beats him, gets a win, gets a knockout. He's right back, But I think another problem that I don't think people really talked about as much is I think Jake, when he goes down in these weight classes, So he started his fighting, I think, at 195 maybe, or maybe 190, and then he went up to 195 because he gained some muscle. Every fight since the first Tyron Woodley fight, he's been lowering his weight a little bit. And I don't necessarily know if that's good for him. I think that kind of may be hurting his power. Is that a possibility? Because it just seemed like he wasn't hurting Anderson Silva the same way as he hurt Woodley, in that knockout. Like you'd think that
I think that Woodley is an old guy, dude, with a bad chin.
but Jake is this guy who supposedly just has this crazy power. And I just feel like he's not hurting people.
Dude,
like
what is the common denominator amongst Jake Paul's other opponents? They're all old.
So was Silva. So was Silva.
Yeah, but Silva got knocked down. That's what I'm saying. Like
he couldn't knock out Silva though.
Yeah, but he still hit Silva a whole lot more. I'm just saying that Tommy Fury is a young 23-year-old guy who's not been through wars.
Yeah, I think that the weight class, it just doesn't seem like there's as much power in those punches he's throwing.
I think if you put Jake Paul in there with Nate Diaz on that night, he knocks him out.
You think so?
Yes, I think that the power, bro, is first of all, like I can understand the power diminishing if he's like shredded in the cage. Jake Paul's not like shredded or that lean. He has some weight on him that'll allow him to not like diet down to where he's like starving.
But that could just be his body type too. Everyone's body types are like, I don't know.
I think he's not like a DC in this. But this guy, I want to read some of the chat because there's some good comments. This guy said, I think Jake should move to MMA. He's got better hands than your average low-level MMA fighter and already has a good wrestling base. If he works on his grappling, he could beat a few guys. Yeah, I think that would be interesting. First, he should fight a boxer. I think Jacob and I have talked about him fighting on the undercard of Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia. But I also think that a good introductory MMA fight could be like a really, really one-dimensional UFC fighter who sucks on the ground. Or just fight someone else in the UFC. Fight a guy that's not in the UFC and bring him to the UFC and sign under Dana White to bring in some money, bring in some eyes.
Jake moving to MMA.
I mean, listen, MMA is definitely hard. I say things like Darren Till just has a left hand, but of course, Darren Till's grappling is going to be better than Jake Paul, and his kicking is going to be an issue. Those guys have to prepare for a lot of other things.
I don't know if Jake wants to do that though. You know what I mean? That's what it comes down to. Like, I don't know if he's going to have that motivation.
And that maybe he doesn't want to do MMA. Maybe now he's going to want to try something else. But I really think the brain damage is going to be like something that is going to make him think twice about doing boxing, because that's the benefit at MMA. Yeah, you do get hit in the head, but like you have the hands. You have really good hands. You have to worry about getting submitted, getting kicked, stuff like that. But
this next move is a make or break move for Jake Paul.
It is.
It's that's what it comes down. How much longer do you think Jake Paul boxes for now? Under or over 2 more years?
Depends. If he continues to win, he could box for a long time. If he loses again relatively soon, he's not going to box seriously.
I don't think he can afford to have another loss.
I think he can afford to have another loss. Just depends on who. If he goes to war with like a higher level guy, I think that's a respectable loss.
Yeah. I think the thing about Tommy that sucks though is like he obviously has got good hands, he's got good speed, he's got good combination, stuff like that. He's just no power. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like I don't think Tommy could really work up his way in these rankings with that lack of power, honestly. You know, he's not going to keep outboxing guys who are better. You know, he's not going to outbox guys who are better than him. So, and that's his only way of beating these opponents is by outboxing people. That's how Tommy wins his fights, by outboxing people. He's just not going to be able to outbox guys who are a bit better. So,
I agree.